The two pink lines stared back at me, and my breath hitched. A wave of dizziness, quickly followed by a giddy, bubbling joy, washed over me. Pablo, I had to tell Pablo, and then his parents. My name is Nina, by the way, and I was 24, head over heels in love, and apparently about to become a mom. We're pregnant, Pablo stammered, his eyes wide as saucers when I showed him the test later that evening. Then a slow grin spread across his face, pure and uncomplicated. He pulled me into a hug, spinning me around our small apartment kitchen. "This is amazing, Nina, amazing." Telling his parents, Nadine and Gary, felt like a bigger hurdle. They were a lot. Wealthy, influential, and always perfectly put together. We went to their sprawling house for dinner that Saturday, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. "We have some news," Pablo announced after the main course, his hand finding mine under the heavy linen tablecloth. Nadine raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Oh?" I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Nadine shrieked, a high-pitched sound of pure, unadulterated ecstasy that made the crystal glasses on the table tremble. "Oh, my darling girl, a baby! Gary, did you hear? A baby!" She was out of her seat in a flash, rushing around the table to envelop me in a cloud of expensive perfume and rustling silk. "This is the most wonderful news. We're going to have a grandchild." Gary, usually more reserved, was beaming, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Well, now this calls for champagne, the best champagne." He clapped Pablo on the shoulder. "My boy, you've done well." From that moment on, it was a whirlwind. Nadine took over. "We'll need to redecorate one of the West Wing rooms for a nursery, of course. Something classic, but with modern touches. I saw the most divine crib in that little boutique on Regent Street. And clothes, oh, the tiny clothes." Her eyes sparkled. "You'll need a whole new wardrobe, Nina dear. Designer maternity, naturally. We can't have you looking anything less than perfect." Gary chimed in, "And a trust fund for the little one, obviously. Set them up for life. No worries, ever." It was intoxicating. They whisked me off to exclusive prenatal appointments, paraded me at their charity galas and garden parties, my slight bump already a topic of delighted conversation among their friends. "Our beautiful Nina," Nadine would coo, her hand resting possessively on my shoulder. "Glowing, isn't she?" I did feel like I was glowing. I felt cherished, adored, and so incredibly secure. Pablo was sweet, attentive in his own way, clearly happy, though mostly content to let his mother orchestrate everything. I loved him, and I was so grateful for this incredible family that was welcoming me and our baby with such open arms. Sometimes, late at night, a little worry would niggle. My own dad, Steve, had been struggling. His construction business, once so successful, had hit a rough patch, then a steeper one. Whispers of serious financial trouble had reached me, and my heart ached for him. But then I'd look around at the lavish plans being made for my baby, the promises of stability and luxury, and a wave of relief would wash over me. My child would have everything. They'd be safe. A few weeks into this dizzying new reality, Nadine called me over for tea, just the two of us. "Now that you're truly going to be part of this family," she said, her smile a little tighter than usual, her eyes appraising me. She reached for a velvet box on the mahogany side table. "There's something I want you to have." She opened it, revealing a diamond bracelet. It was substantial, thick, encrusted with large, rather flashy diamonds. It wasn't really my style, but it was undeniably expensive. "This has been in the family for generations," Nadine said, her voice taking on a reverent tone as she lifted it from the box. She fastened it around my wrist. It felt heavy, cold. "It's for the woman who carries the next Morgan heir." Her fingers lingered on the clasp. "You're one of us now, dear. Permanently." Her words were warm, reassuring, everything I thought I wanted to hear. But as the diamonds glittered under the soft lamplight, a tiny, inexplicable shiver traced its way down my spine. I pushed it away, blaming it on a draught from the large bay window. I was just being silly. This was my future, secure, dazzling, permanent. The news about Dad hit like a physical blow. "Porter construction collapses amidst mounting debts," one headline screamed. Another, more bluntly, "City developer Steve Porter declares bankruptcy." My stomach churned. I called Dad, his voice small and defeated, confirming the worst. He'd lost everything. My first thought, after the immediate shock and worry for him, was a strange sort of gratitude for the Morgans. Thank God for them, I thought. Thank God our baby will be insulated from this disaster. Nadine had said I was one of them now, permanently. They wouldn't let this affect us. I had dinner plans at their mansion that evening, something Nadine had insisted on. To discuss nursery colour palettes, darling. I almost called to cancel, feeling too raw, too anxious about Dad, but a small voice told me I needed their reassurance. I needed to see their kind faces, hear their comforting words. The moment their butler, a man who usually greeted me with a polite smile, opened the door with a stiff, formal nod, I knew something was wrong. The air in the grand foyer, usually buzzing with warmth and light, felt frigid. "Nina," Nadine said. Her voice, usually so effusive when addressing me, was flat, devoid of any affection. She was standing by the enormous stone fireplace, Gary beside her, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Pablo hovered near the doorway to the formal dining room, looking pale and avoiding my eyes. "Nadine, Gary," I began, trying for a smile. "I'm so sorry to hear about... Well, you've probably heard about my father." "We have," Nadine said, her voice like chips of ice. "Ghastly business, simply ghastly." Gary finally spoke, his tone clipped. "A terrible shame. For him." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The usual pre-dinner drinks weren't offered. No one moved to sit. "Well," Nadine said, breaking the silence with a sharp exhale. "That changes everything, doesn't it?" My blood ran cold. Changes what? She took a step closer, her eyes sweeping over me, no longer with adoration, but with something akin to distaste. "Your father's ruin, Nina. It reflects poorly, very poorly, on anyone associated with him." "But what does that have to do with me? With the baby?" I glanced at Pablo, a desperate plea in my eyes. He shifted his weight, staring at a point on the Persian rug. "Everything, dear," Nadine said, the endearment now a weapon. "We have a reputation to maintain, a certain standard. We can't be seen to be entangled with this kind of failure, this kind of scandal." Gary nodded, his expression hardening. "It's just not suitable, Nina. You must understand." "Understand?" My voice trembled. "Understand what? You said I was family. You were excited about the baby." Nadine laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Oh, we were excited about the idea of a grandchild, yes, a grandchild from a good stable background, not one tainted by financial ruin and public disgrace." My jaw dropped. "Tainted?" "You're no use to us now, Nina," Gary stated bluntly, "or to our son." I stared at Pablo, my heart shattering. "Pablo, say something! This is our baby!" He finally looked at me, his expression a miserable mix of shame and fear. "Nina, Mum and Dad, they know best." "Know best?" I choked out, tears welling. "They're throwing me out. They're throwing our baby out." "It's better this way," Nadine said smoothly. "A clean break. Pablo needs to focus on his future, a future unencumbered by complications." She gestured vaguely towards my stomach. "We'll expect you to leave the premises, immediately." "Leave?" I whispered, the word catching in my throat. "But I have nowhere to go right now." "That's hardly our concern," Gary said, his voice cold. "You'll manage." I stood there, stunned into silence, the cruelty of their words washing over me in waves. They had built me up so high, only to tear me down with such casual brutality. My love, my security, my future, all illusions, shattered on the marble floor of their opulent home. Numbly, I turned to leave, clutching my small handbag, the only thing I'd brought with me. As I reached the massive oak door, Nadine's voice, sharp and commanding, stopped me. "Oh, and that bracelet, dear." I looked down at the gaudy diamond band still on my wrist. She strode towards me, her eyes glinting. "I'll take that back." Before I could react, her fingers, surprisingly strong, dug into my skin as she fumbled with the clasp. It sprang open, and she ripped the bracelet from my wrist, leaving a red mark. "This was never meant for someone like you," she spat, her face a mask of contempt. Then the heavy door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing the finality of their decision, leaving me alone in the sudden darkness of the porch, the cold night air biting at my tear-streaked face. The slam of that door echoed in my ears long after I stumbled away from the Morgan mansion. My legs felt like lead, my vision blurred by a torrent of tears I couldn't stop, homeless, heartbroken, and terrified for my baby. The words Nadine had spat, tainted, no use to us, replayed in a cruel loop. I ended up at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, the kind with flickering neon signs and threadbare carpets. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. I collapsed onto the lumpy bed, the sobs racking my body until I was utterly exhausted, my throat raw. How could they? How could Pablo just stand there and let them do that to me, to us? The weight of their betrayal was crushing. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, when the tears had finally subsided into a dull, throbbing ache behind my eyes, I remembered Charlie, my best friend, my rock. My fingers fumbled with my phone, dialing her number. "Nina, what's wrong? You sound awful." Charlie's voice, warm and concerned, crackled through the line. The story spilled out, a jumbled, tearful mess of broken promises and icy cruelty. Charlie listened patiently, interjecting only with soft murmurs of sympathy and growing outrage. "Those absolute monsters!" she finally exploded when I finished. "I'm coming to get you. Text me the address. You're not staying there another minute." An hour later, Charlie was bundling me into her beat-up hatchback, her arm around my shoulders, her presence a small beacon of warmth in the desolate landscape of my emotions. "You're staying with me, okay? For as long as you need." Back at her cosy, slightly cluttered apartment, she made me tea and toast, fussing over me like a mother hen. "We'll figure this out, Nina. I promise. You're not alone." Her kindness was almost too much to bear, a stark contrast to the Morgan's callousness. I cried again, but this time it felt a little less hopeless. The next day, still numb, I started sorting through the few belongings I had with me, the contents of my handbag, a small overnight bag I'd thankfully left in my car from a previous weekend trip. Tucked into a side pocket of the overnight bag, underneath a forgotten scarf, was a thick cream-coloured envelope. My grandmother Wendy's elegant handwriting was on the front. I'd completely forgotten about it. Gran had given it to me on my 21st birthday, with strict instructions not to open it until my 23rd, or, if you ever find yourself in truly dire straits, my love. My 23rd birthday had passed quietly a few months ago, overshadowed by the whirlwind of my relationship with Pablo and the pregnancy. And dire straits, this was definitely it. With trembling fingers, I broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter and several official-looking documents. "My dearest Nina," Gran's familiar script began, "if you are reading this under duress, know that my heart is with you. I always wanted you to have your own independence, a safety net woven with love, just in case life threw you one of its curveballs. I've set up a trust fund in your name. It's not a king's ransom, but it's enough to give you choices, to ensure you never have to rely on anyone who doesn't truly cherish you. The details are with Mr. Albright, our family solicitor. His contact information is enclosed. He will guide you." My breath caught in my throat. A trust fund? Gran had always been practical and loving, but this was foresight on another level. I'd always assumed her modest savings had gone to my father. Charlie peered over my shoulder. "What is it?" I could barely speak. "My Gran. She left me something. A trust fund." Charlie's eyes widened. "No way, Nina, that's incredible." My heart hammered against my ribs. Could this be real? A lifeline? I looked at the solicitor's card, Mr. Albright. I remembered him vaguely from Gran's funeral, a kind, elderly gentleman. I need to call him, I whispered, a flicker of something, hope, determination, igniting in the pit of my stomach. Charlie squeezed my hand. Do it, right now. My hand was shaking so much I could barely dial the numbers. The receptionist put me through almost immediately. Mr. Albright's office, he's expecting your call regarding the Wendy Porter Trust. Expecting my call? Then his calm, steady voice came on the line. Miss Porter, Nina, it's good to finally hear from you. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. Mr. Albright, I stammered, the letter, the trust fund. Is it real? There was a gentle chuckle on the other end. Oh, very real, my dear, and per your grandmother's instructions, it became fully accessible to you on your 23rd birthday, or in the event of significant personal need. I'd say your current circumstances qualify. He paused, then added, Yes, Miss Porter, the funds are substantial and immediately available to you. A wave of disbelief so potent it almost knocked the air from my lungs washed over me. Substantial, immediately available. I looked at Charlie, tears streaming down my face again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of shock, of relief, of a dawning, fierce resolve. They thought they broke me. I thought a cold fury mixing with the burgeoning hope. They thought they could just throw me away. Mr. Albright was still talking, explaining logistics, but one phrase echoed in my mind. Substantial and immediately available. A tiny, defiant smile touched my lips. They have no idea what's coming. The meeting with Mr. Albright was a blur of legal documents and reassuring explanations. Your grandmother was very specific, Nina, he said, his kind eyes twinkling. She wanted you to have a fresh start, unburdened if you ever needed it. And substantial was an understatement. Gran Wendy, bless her shrewd, loving heart, had left me more than comfortable. She'd left me empowered. Charlie, my ever-practical wingwoman, immediately went into action mode. Right, she declared, pulling out her laptop the moment I got back to her apartment, buzzing with the news. First things first, a proper place to live. No more couches, no more motel rooms. You and that baby need security and peace. We spent days apartment hunting. I wanted something bright, safe, with a spare room for a nursery. We found it in a leafy, quiet neighbourhood, a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with big windows overlooking a park. It felt like a sanctuary. Signing the lease, using my own money, felt like the first real step towards reclaiming my life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity, but a good kind. I threw myself into creating a home. Charlie helped me pick out furniture, her taste surprisingly good for someone whose own apartment looked like a charming explosion in a craft store. We assembled a crib, painted the nursery a soft, sunny yellow, and hung whimsical animal prints on the walls. Each little touch, each decision made solely by me, for me and my baby, was a balm to my wounded spirit. I started attending all my prenatal appointments diligently. The doctors were kind, reassuring. I joined a prenatal yoga class, focusing on my breathing, on the tiny life growing inside me. And on Charlie's gentle insistence, I started therapy. You've been through a trauma, Nina, she'd said, her expression serious. Talking about it will help. You don't have to carry all that pain alone. She was right. Unpacking the betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer shock of the Morgans' cruelty with a neutral third party was incredibly healing. Slowly, the raw edges of my grief began to soften. I didn't cut myself off entirely from the world I'd known. Occasionally, through mutual acquaintances or snippets of gossip Charlie would relay, she had an uncanny ability to pick up on such things. I'd hear whispers about the Morgans. Apparently, they were putting on a brave face, attending their usual society events, but there were murmurs that their perfect facade was perhaps just that, a facade. Nothing concrete, just a general sense that things weren't quite as rosy in their gilded cage as they liked to project. It was a small, petty satisfaction, I'll admit, but it was there. One afternoon, about a month after I'd moved into my new apartment, I was sitting in a little independent coffee shop near my place, sketching ideas for the nursery mobile. I'd treated myself to a decaf latte and a pastry, enjoying a rare moment of quiet solitude. Suddenly, I felt a familiar prickle on the back of my neck. I looked up, scanning the other patrons, and then I saw him. Pablo. He was sitting alone at a table by the window, staring blankly out at the street. He looked different, thinner somehow. His usually perfectly styled hair was a little dishevelled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked stressed, deeply unhappy, and utterly alone. Our eyes met, just for a fraction of a second. A jolt went through me. His gaze flickered, widened almost imperceptibly, and then he looked away, fast, so fast. A dark flush crept up his neck. Shame. It was unmistakably shame. My first instinct, surprisingly, was a pang of pity. He looked so lost, so pathetic, but it was quickly followed by a wave of cold, hard resolve. He'd made his choice. He'd stood by, silent, while his parents destroyed me. He didn't deserve my pity. I picked up my pencil and deliberately turned back to my sketchbook, my hand steady. Let him see me calm, focused, moving on. Let him see that they hadn't broken me. Not even close. When I dared to glance up again a few minutes later, his table was empty. He was gone. Good, I thought, good. The prenatal yoga class became a sanctuary. The gentle stretching, the focus on breath, the quiet camaraderie with other expectant mothers. It was all incredibly soothing. I was about 6 months along now, my bump prominent and round, and I felt a sense of blooming, a quiet confidence I hadn't known before. One Saturday morning, a new face appeared in class. A man. He was accompanying a woman who looked to be about as pregnant as I was. He unrolled his mat next to mine, offering a friendly, slightly sheepish smile. "Hi," he said, his voice warm. "I'm Russell. This is my sister Chloe. Her husband's out of town, and she strong-armed me into coming. Said I needed to embrace the Zen." Chloe playfully swatted his arm. "He needs it. And hi, I'm Chloe. You must be Nina. Our instructor, Maria, mentions your excellent tree pose." I laughed, feeling an easy warmth spread through me. "That's me. Nice to meet you both." After class, as we were all packing up, Russell struck up a conversation. "So, tree pose champion," he said, a teasing light in his eyes. "You come here often?" "Every week," I replied, smiling. "It's my sanity saver." "I can see why," he said, glancing around at the calm studio. "It's definitely zen." He paused, then, "Chloe and I were thinking of grabbing a smoothie at that place down the street. Would you like to join us?" I hesitated for only a moment. Why not? He seemed genuinely nice, and Chloe was lovely. "I'd like that," I said. Over smoothies, I learned that Russell was an architect, specialising in sustainable design. He talked passionately about his projects, his eyes lighting up. He asked about me, not in an intrusive way, but with genuine curiosity. I found myself telling him about my love for design, my plans for the nursery, carefully skirting around the recent trauma with the Morgans. He didn't pry. He just listened, his gaze attentive and kind. When I mentioned I was expecting, his smile widened. "That's wonderful," he said, his voice sincere. "Kids are the best." We started seeing more of each other. Sometimes Chloe would join us after yoga. Sometimes it was just Russell and me. He'd call to see how I was doing, invite me for walks in the park, or to check out a new exhibit he thought I'd like. It was all so easy, so natural. There were no grand pronouncements, no suffocating expectations, just a gentle, growing connection. He admired the nursery I was creating, offered to help assemble a particularly complicated changing table, an offer I gratefully accepted, and always, always treated me with a respect and kindness that felt like a soothing balm on old wounds. He was everything Pablo, with his passive compliance and inherited arrogance, was not. One evening, Charlie came over for dinner, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "So," she said, as I dished up pasta, "this Russell guy, he's nice." "He is," I admitted, a small smile playing on my lips. "And he's totally into you, you know," she added, waggling her eyebrows. I blushed. "We're just friends, Charlie. Friends who look at each other like you're the only two people in the room. Right." She took a bite of pasta. "Seriously though, Nina, he seems great, and you deserve great." Then her expression shifted, a familiar glint of gossip in her eyes. "Speaking of not so great, you will not believe what I heard about the Morgans." I braced myself. "What now?" "Well," Charlie leaned in conspiratorially, "you know how Gary always acted like he was Midas himself? Turns out not so much. Rumour has it he made some super risky investments a while back, big ones, and they're tanking, hard. Apparently their rock-solid fortune isn't quite as rock-solid as they like to pretend." A strange feeling washed over me. Not joy exactly, more like a profound sense of irony. They'd discarded me for being tainted by failure, and now their own gilded cage was looking a little shaky. A few days later, Russell and I were sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. He'd brought over takeout from my favourite Thai place. "I was thinking," he said, turning to me, his expression earnest. "The baby's due in a couple of months. Before things get too hectic, how would you feel about a weekend getaway? There's this charming little coastal town I know, really peaceful, good food, sea air. We could just relax." My heart swelled. A weekend away, just us. It sounded heavenly. A world away from the tension and anxiety that had once defined my life. "Russell, that sounds perfect," I said, my voice soft. He reached out and took my hand, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles. "Good." His eyes, full of a warmth that felt completely genuine, met mine. "I want you and this baby to have everything you deserve, Nina. Real happiness, real peace." A deep sense of contentment settled over me, a feeling so pure and strong it almost brought tears to my eyes. This was real. This was good. This was my new dawn. The coastal weekend with Russell was idyllic. We walked along the beach, the salty air invigorating, his hand warm in mine. We ate fresh seafood at little cafes overlooking the harbour, talking for hours, laughing easily. He never once made me feel like my pregnancy was an inconvenience or a burden. Instead, he'd place a gentle hand on my belly when the baby kicked, his face lighting up with a smile that was pure, uncomplicated joy. It was a world away from the performative enthusiasm of the Morgans, their excitement always feeling like it was for an audience. Back home, our relationship deepened. We were a team. Russell was there for every late-night ice cream craving, every moment of panic about impending parenthood, every joyful milestone like feeling the baby hiccup. We spent weekends browsing baby stores, him patiently offering opinions on everything from car seat safety ratings to the softness of onesies. He'd joke, "I'm getting a crash course in all things tiny. Pretty soon I'll be able to assemble a crib blindfolded." "You practically can already," I'd laugh, remembering his triumphant battle with the flat-pack changing table. I was radiant and I knew it. Not just the pregnancy glow, though that was definitely part of it. It was a deeper, more settled happiness. I felt secure, loved, and incredibly excited about the future. We were often out together, quiet dinners, strolls in the park, prenatal appointments he insisted on attending. We were, quite simply, happy. With my newfound financial independence and a surge of creative energy, I decided to start a small online consultancy. My background was in graphic design and marketing, skills I'd honed before Pablo, before the Morgans, before my life took its sharp, unexpected turns. I built a simple website, reached out to a few old contacts, and surprisingly quickly, small projects started trickling in. It wasn't about needing the money anymore, not really. It was about building something for myself, by myself. It was about proving, mostly to myself, that I was more than just someone's discarded girlfriend. I was capable, creative, and now truly independent. Charlie, of course, was my biggest cheerleader. "Look at you," she exclaimed one afternoon, visiting me at my apartment, which was now fully transformed into a cosy, welcoming home, the nursery a haven of soft colours and anticipation. Successful businesswoman, glowing mom-to-be, snagged the hottest, kindest architect in the city. Seriously, Nina, if this isn't a glow-up, I don't know what is. It's good, I admitted, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Life is really, really good. One sunny Tuesday, I decided to treat myself. The baby was due in a matter of weeks, and I still needed a good stroller. I'd researched extensively and had my eye on a particular model. Sturdy, stylish, and yes, a little on the pricey side. But why not? My baby deserved the best, and I could afford it. I went to an exclusive baby boutique downtown, the kind of place Nadine would have frequented, her nose slightly in the air. The air hummed with quiet wealth and the scent of expensive baby powder. As I was examining the features of the stroller, discussing suspension systems and fabric choices with a helpful sales assistant, I felt it, that prickling sensation on my skin, the feeling of being watched. I casually glanced around. The boutique was busy, other expectant mothers and well-heeled grandmothers browsing the displays. No one looked familiar. No one was overtly staring. I shook it off. "You're just being paranoid," I told myself. "It's a public place. People look." But the feeling lingered, an unsettling little itch under my skin. I completed my purchase, the sales assistant congratulating me on my excellent choice and arranging for delivery. As I walked out of the boutique, the stroller now mine, I couldn't resist one last glance over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the bustling street, the afternoon sun glinting off shop windows. Still, the unease remained, a tiny crack in my otherwise perfect contentment. Are they watching me? The thought, unbidden, snaked into my mind. Or am I just letting the past cast too long a shadow? I hoped it was the latter. I really, really hoped so. The unsettling feeling from the boutique eventually faded, chalked up to late pregnancy jitters. Life was too full, too bright to dwell on shadows. A few weeks later, on a glorious sun-drenched Saturday morning, Russell and I headed to our favourite upscale organic market. It was a weekend ritual we both loved. The vibrant colours of the fresh produce, the smell of artisanal bread, the cheerful buzz of people enjoying their day. I was huge, just weeks away from my due date, but I felt fantastic. Russell had bought me a bright yellow sunflower from one of the flower stalls, and I'd tucked it behind my ear, laughing as he declared me his sunshine. He laced his fingers through mine, his touch warm and reassuring. We were browsing a stall laden with organic baby purees. "Only the best for our little sprout," Russell was saying, examining a jar of sweet potato and pear, when it happened. I looked up, a smile still on my face from Russell's comment, and froze. Standing not 10 feet away, directly in our path, were Nadine and Gary, and trailing a few steps behind them, looking like a kicked puppy, was Pablo. They stopped dead. It was like a scene from a movie, everything screeching to a halt. Nadine's jaw literally dropped. Her perfectly made-up face, usually a mask of haughty composure, registered pure, unadulterated shock. Her eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted from my serene, smiling face to Russell's arm possessively around my waist, to my very prominent, very real baby bump, and then back to my face. Gary looked like he'd seen a ghost. The colour drained from his usually ruddy complexion, and he seemed to shrink, his expensive linen shirt suddenly looking a size too big. Pablo just stared at the ground, his shoulders slumped, the picture of dejection. He wouldn't or couldn't meet my eyes. The silence stretched for an eternity, thick and suffocating, broken only by the distant chatter of other shoppers. I could feel Russell tense beside me, his grip on my hand tightening almost imperceptibly. Nadine was the first to find her voice, though it was shaky, thin. "Nina," she stammered, her gaze still fixed on me as if I were an apparition. Is that you?" A slow, serene smile spread across my face. I felt remarkably calm, a strange, powerful stillness settling over me. My hand went instinctively to my belly, a protective, proud gesture. "Yes, Nadine," I said, my voice clear and steady. "It is." I let my gaze travel from her stunned face to Gary's pale one, then briefly, coolly, to Pablo's bowed head. "You know," I continued, my tone conversational, almost light, "you once told me I was no use to you, that my father's ruin reflected poorly." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Funny how things turn out, isn't it? I squeezed Russell's hand, drawing strength from his solid presence. "We were just picking up some things for our baby's nursery." I emphasized the hour, my smile widening, only the best, of course. The impact of my words was visible. Nadine's face contorted, a bizarre mixture of rage, disbelief, and something that looked terrifyingly like dawning horror. Gary just looked ill. The air crackled with their unutterable regret, their humiliation a palpable thing. This wasn't how they'd envisioned things. This radiant, confident woman, partnered with a handsome, attentive man, clearly prospering, clearly happy, about to have a baby they'd so callously discarded. This wasn't in their script. Nadine, bless her arrogant heart, tried to rally. She drew herself up, her eyes narrowing as she glared at Russell, her voice dripping with her old familiar disdain. "And who is this?" she demanded, as if he were some distasteful insect she'd found on her shoe. She was trying to regain control, to reassert her imagined superiority. Before I could even open my mouth, Russell stepped slightly forward, his arm moving from my waist to rest protectively on my shoulder. He looked directly at Nadine, his expression polite, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of steel. "I'm the man who loves her," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And our child." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "And you are?" Nadine gasped, a small choked sound. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked, for the first time since I'd met her, utterly speechless, completely and thoroughly deflated. Checkmate. Russell's simple, direct question hung in the air, a perfectly aimed arrow that found its mark. Nadine just stared, her face a mask of stunned outrage. Gary looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. Pablo, if possible, seemed to shrink even further. Without another word, Russell gently steered me away. We didn't look back. We didn't need to. The image of their shattered composure, their arrogant world crumbling around them in the middle of an organic vegetable aisle, was seared into my memory. As we walked towards the market exit, the sunshine felt warmer, the colours brighter. A profound sense of release washed over me, so pure and cleansing it felt like I could finally breathe properly for the first time in months. I hadn't needed to scream or rage or list their sins, their faces, their shock, their dawning, horrified understanding. That was enough. That was everything. The following weeks were a blur of final preparations and joyful anticipation. Then, one crisp autumn evening, our beautiful, healthy daughter, Lily, made her entrance into the world. Holding her in my arms, watching Russell gaze at her with such overwhelming love, I knew a happiness so profound it eclipsed everything that had come before. Our little apartment, already filled with love, now overflowed with it. Life settled into a new, wonderful rhythm. Sleepless nights, yes, but also endless cuddles, tiny smiles, and the incredible miracle of watching a new life unfold. My online consultancy was thriving, giving me the flexibility to work from home and be present for Lily. Russell was the most incredible partner and father, hands-on, patient, and utterly besotted with our daughter. Charlie, of course, was a frequent visitor, dubbing herself Auntie Charlie the Awesome. It was during one of her visits, as she was expertly burping Lily, that she delivered the latest Morgan-related news. "So," she began, her voice casual but with that familiar glint in her eye. Word on the street is that Gary's little investment hiccup turned into a full-blown financial avalanche. They've had to sell the mansion. I raised an eyebrow. The mansion? Really? Yep. Downsized considerably, apparently. And the social invitations? Dried up. Seems their brand of cruelty isn't quite so fashionable when you're not dripping in diamonds and throwing lavish parties. Funny how that works. She smirked. Turns out a few well-placed whispers about how they treated a pregnant young woman. Well, let's just say some people have long memories and a strong sense of justice. I suspected Charlie, in her own discreet way, might have helped those whispers along. I didn't ask. And Pablo, I found myself asking, a flicker of old curiosity. Still miserable from what I hear, Charlie said, shrugging. Living with them in their much smaller, much less grand new place. No glittering career, no happy family, just existing. A part of me should have felt something. Pity, perhaps, or even a lingering anger. But all I felt was a distant sort of detachment. Their lives, their dramas, felt like they belonged to another world, another lifetime. Then, about a month after Lily was born, a large, ostentatiously wrapped package arrived by courier. There was no return address, but the overly floral gift card, tucked beneath an enormous satin bow, was signed with a flourish. With deepest affection, Nadine. Inside the box, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, was an obscenely expensive, frankly hideous silver rattle encrusted with what looked like tiny diamonds. Tucked beside it was a letter, several pages long, handwritten on thick, creamy stationery. It was from Nadine. I scanned it, my stomach churning slightly. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, full of saccharine sentiment about the precious new life, vague apologies for any past misunderstandings, and a desperate cloying plea for a chance to be a grandmother to Lily. She even mentioned how difficult things had been for them lately. My hand tightened on the letter, the audacity. Russell came into the room, Lily asleep on his shoulder. He saw the box, the letter in my hand, my expression. "What's that?" "A Trojan horse," I said, my voice flat. I handed him the letter. He read it, his jaw tightening. When he finished, he looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. "What do you want to do?" I looked at Lily, so small, so perfect, so innocent of the ugliness that had touched my life. Then I looked at Russell, my rock, my love. "Return to sender," I said, a calm certainty settling in my heart. The next day, Russell took the unopened gift and the letter to a courier service. He included a simple, polite, typewritten note. "Ms. Porter and her family appreciate your sentiments, but request no further contact at this time. They wish you well." It was done. The final severing. No drama, no confrontation, just a quiet, firm closing of a door that should have been slammed shut long ago. That evening, as I rocked Lily to sleep, the scent of her baby shampoo filling the air, I thought of my grandmother Wendy. Her gift hadn't just been the money, though that had been the key that unlocked my escape. Her true gift was the chance to build this life, this beautiful, authentic life, on my own terms. And in doing so, in finding genuine happiness and thriving in the face of their cruelty, I'd delivered the most potent karma of all. My joy was the ultimate revenge, a quiet symphony of a life well lived, a life they could never touch, never taint again. Their memory was now just a footnote, a faded photograph from a past that no longer had any power over me. My present and my future were far too bright for that.